And then there were days that it was genuinely hard for me to get out of bed because I was just so overwhelmed with anxiety and stress. And when I did this, it was really helpful because I wasn't getting as bogged down in the tiny details like the 15 or 20 items on my to-do list. I could focus on what was really important. Good morning, fam. Welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for clicking on today's video. As you can tell from the title, we're going to be talking about anxiety and my experience trying to overcome anxiety in my own life. As a disclaimer, I just want to say the things that I'm going to be talking about are not recommendations. I'm not telling you you should do X, Y, and Z to get over your anxiety. I'm just telling you the things that I'm trying and the things that I have found to work for me. So just getting that out of the way, disclaimer, I'm not telling you what to do. Now that we have the disclaimer out of the way, make sure that you subscribe to my channel and hit that like button because that's really great for the YouTube algorithm, so I've been told. And follow me on Instagram at Kristis_day. All right, I'm gonna give you just a little bit of my history with anxiety in a nutshell so you kind of see where I'm coming from. Anxiety is actually something that I never thought I would deal with. It was never something that was talked about in my family, and to my knowledge, none of my family members or close friends have dealt with something like severe anxiety. And looking back into my past and my childhood, I realized I had a lot of tendencies even back then that were really indicative of someone who had anxiety, even if it was just a mild case. So I do feel like I've had the tendency towards anxiety throughout most of my life, but things have just progressively gotten worse as I've gotten older. I really began to notice my anxiety my freshman and sophomore year of college, and a lot of this was because of the eating disorder that I was struggling with. And I started to realize that I was anxious to do pretty much everything. I was anxious when it came to going out with my friends, staying in, eating, exercising. Like every aspect of my life caused me anxiety. Again, at this point, I didn't really put a name to my experiences. I didn't realize that I was suffering from anxiety. I kind of just thought I wasn't managing my stress correctly. But by the end of my sophomore year, I was really struggling to the point that I would sit down to study and I would just end up with my face in my pillow, lying on my bed, just feeling so overwhelmed by everything going on in my head that I couldn't genuinely sit down and actually study. I would get really sick to my stomach. I had a lot of very physical symptoms along with mental symptoms. And I remember sitting down, this was a couple weeks before finals, and I wrote an email to my professor and I said, just so you know, I'm experiencing something crazy and I'm probably gonna fail your final. And I sent her this email and she responded and said, hey, Kristi, can you please come and talk to me in my office? So I sat down with her and I was telling her everything that was going on and how I wasn't really able to handle my day-to-day life. Obviously, I was dealing with an eating disorder, which I make a lot of videos about. But in addition to that, I was dealing with this severe anxiety. And when I was describing to my professor these symptoms I was having, she said, you know, I think you're having anxiety attacks. I never thought this was something that I would be dealing with, and because of the culture that I was raised in and the conservative environment that I was raised in, there was a lot of stigma around mental health and a lot of misunderstandings. I didn't really know how to deal with this information. And my professor, she was very gracious and gave me some options as far as what I could do to study or get through the next couple of weeks before school was going to end. And she also suggested that I go and see a doctor and get prescribed some anti-anxiety medication. And at this point, I was very hesitant to do this for a couple of reasons. Number one, I didn't want my parents to know. And so I knew that I would have to pay for everything out of my own pocket, and it was going to be quite expensive to go see a doctor and then to pay for the medications. And the second reason was I was hesitant to take a medication for something that I, at the time, believed to just be a lack of stress management. I thought that if I tried hard enough or I just did the right things, my anxiety would go away. Again, I am not dissing on medication. I think that there could be a time where if this anxiety becomes so debilitating, I will go and take medication without hesitation, because the reality is that the most important thing is for me and well for everyone to be able to function and have a balanced and healthy lifestyle. And if a medication will help you get to that point, then great. But my personal preference is to try to manage this anxiety in other ways before I go and take a medication, just my personal preference. So I wasn't diagnosed for a number of years with anxiety. I never went to a doctor because of my anxiety. However, when I did go to an eating disorder treatment facility about a year ago, I've made a few videos about that. But when I was there, if I remember correctly, and everything's a bit hazy, but I believe I was diagnosed with some type of anxiety disorder along with my eating disorder diagnosis. So besides that, I haven't been diagnosed and I've never taken any medication for anxiety. Throughout college, dealing with anxiety, I obviously had ups and downs. There were times that I really didn't struggle that much. I was able to function fine, and obviously fine as much as I could with an eating disorder that I was struggling with. And then there were days that it was genuinely hard for me to get out of bed because I was just so overwhelmed with anxiety and stress. So throughout college, a lot of ups and downs. I graduated in 2020 and moved out of my parents' place a couple months after I graduated and have been on my own in my own place for about the last year. Since moving out, I've really been focusing on building my communications business, recovering from my eating disorder, finding happiness and balance in my day-to-day life, and planning and preparing for my future. However, recently, I feel like, especially the last few months, my anxiety has gotten really quite bad. And there are days that I genuinely, again, can't hardly get myself to get out of bed because I'm so anxious. And the anxiety centers around some big things, you know, like my finances, my future, my business, but also around really small, minute things like, did I set my apartment alarm? Did I close my garage door? Did I turn off my coffee maker? And all these things add up to some cases me feeling like I can't function like a normal person throughout my day. And recently, like in the past few months, I have decided that enough is enough. I have a lot of ambitions. There are a lot of things I want to achieve in my life. I want to make money. I want to become successful. I want to make a difference in the world. But looking at my life now, I'm realizing that even if I accomplish everything that I want to accomplish, it doesn't really matter if I'm constantly existing in a state of debilitating anxiety. So I'm really focusing on things that will limit my anxiety and hopefully help me heal from this or get over this or manage this as much as I possibly can. So I've made a game plan. And again, these are things that I have tried in the past or that I'm currently trying now, or things that I feel like have worked for me. This list that I'm about to share with you, some of them I might continue for the rest of my life. Some of them I might replace with better tools later in the future. So I'm definitely not saying, oh, you have to do exactly these things to overcome anxiety, because no, I have not overcome my anxiety. I'm still working on it and struggling with it, but these are things that I have found to help me. Number one is taking time to read every morning. Because I work for myself, I can just wake up and immediately come to my computer and sit down and start working. And for a long time, this is what I did. I would get up and I would work for a few hours and then I would eat breakfast or whatever, but work was one of the first things that I did in the morning. And I found that this kind of started my day in a bit of a stressful way, because I would sit down and I would see this long list of things that I needed to do. And it was like I was immediately overwhelmed before the day had even begun. And so what I've been trying to do is when I wake up, I will brew my coffee and I'll sit down and I'll read for 30 to 45 minutes. And not only is this a habit that I've just wanted to start anyways, because I used to be really good at reading a lot, and lately I've not been as good with that. So I've been wanting to read anyways. And when I start my morning reading, it's almost like I'm telling my brain, hey, it's okay. We can have a slow morning. We're gonna get everything done. And it just kind of starts the day off to being more chill and not immediately being overwhelmed by the things that I need to get done. And I'm not super consistent with this right now. Sometimes it's hard if I have a morning meeting or I happen to sleep in a little bit later. I don't always get the chance to read, but I'm definitely trying to make it a consistent habit. Number two is throw away to-do lists. So a while back, I watched a video by Jim Kwik, and Jim Kwik is someone who has specialized and spent his time helping people optimize their brain performance. Each night before he goes to bed, he writes down 3 professional goals, 3 personal goals, 3 things he wants to feel, and 3 things he wants to be. When I read this, I started to implement this kind of idea into my own life. Rather than having a bunch of items on my to-do list, I would find 3 things that I wanted to focus on in my professional life. And when I did this, it was really helpful because I wasn't getting as bogged down in the tiny details, like the 15 or 20 items on my to-do list. I could focus on what was really important. And I wouldn't make a list of more than 3 things, because the point was to have very specific focus. And I knew that if I would accomplish these 3 things, I would feel accomplished and productive at the end of the day. But over time, I did do that for a while, but over time I kind of got back into my old habit of just writing a bunch of to-do lists. And to be honest, that was just really overwhelming sitting down at my desk and seeing 15 to 20 to 25 small items that I had to get done, and all of them I thought were important, and I was so focused on those tiny details that I was forgetting the main things that I wanted to be focusing on. So now, again, I'm trying to go back into that, writing 3 things every day that I want to accomplish and just focus on those 3 things. For example, today my 3 things were: number 1, write a script for a video; number 2, film a video, which is what we're doing right now; and number 3, tackle a number of the small items on my to-do list. So you might say, oh, well, that's just the same as doing your to-do list. Well, yes and no, because I definitely don't always have that as part of one of my 3 things. But because I'm actually leaving on a trip to California tomorrow, I had to get some of those smaller items done to just prepare for that trip and not be stressed on the trip ahead. Essentially, the point I'm trying to make here is that it's really important to find focus in your life and not get bogged down by all the things that, yes, maybe you need to do them at some point, but they should not be your focus and they should not be what is causing you to be overwhelmed and stressed. All right, number 3 is take advantage of organizational tools. I used to write down all the things that I wanted to do, so my to-do lists, on sticky notes, and I would paste those all over my desk and on my computer monitor. And I would also include things in my planner, and I would have some items on my Google Calendar, and basically I had stuff like all over the place that I needed to do, and it wasn't in a centralized location, and it stressed me out because every time I'd sit down at my desk, I'd see like 5 sticky notes that were just completely covered in things that I needed to get done, and it was constantly overwhelming, and I was always afraid I was gonna forget something and whatnot. So lately what I've been trying to do is organize all these tasks into different programs. I've been trying a few things. I wouldn't say that I'm at the point where I could recommend one program over another, but what I've been using recently is Microsoft To Do, which is a great program where I put all of my tasks in and I can add due dates and reminders. And so basically the point is to have everything in a centralized location. I've also been messing around with Notion a bit, which is like an organizational tool for thoughts and items that you need to get done, and it's a good way and place to collaborate with others. A lot of creators and professionals use Notion. I haven't used it enough to be able to recommend it or not. In fact, I'm just starting to learn it, so we'll see if I end up liking that. And then I also use Google Calendar to remind me of actual appointments that I have, so things that I have to be at a specific place at a specific time. And I also have been playing around with a bit of time blocking when I find that to be useful. But the point here is to not have your to-dos scattered all over the place, but to write down the tasks that you need to get done, maybe in a program like Microsoft To Do or another program. But again, those items should be secondary to your top 3 goals to get done that you want to get done in the day. So that has helped me manage my stress and anxiety when it comes to work-related tasks. Number 4 is time block. Now, I don't time block like some people do, where they block out sections of their entire day and basically have everything allotted to a specific block of time on their calendars. I don't do it that intensely, but there are times when if I really need to focus on one project, like maybe my one big thing of the day, I will block out a time on my calendar so that I know that I can focus on what I need to get done during that time. And this is just kind of helpful for me to know that, okay, you have time set aside to do everything that you need to do, and you're gonna be able to get it done in this amount of time. I'll sometimes even block self-care into my calendar if I don't feel like I'll end up taking that time that I need. I'll block it out, and during that self-care time, I'll pretty much do whatever I wanna do. So maybe I'll go for a walk, or read a book, or watch some TV, or do whatever. Like, it's time for me to do what I want to do. Number 5 is don't over-organize or over-schedule. So I used to be the person that literally mapped out her entire day to the minute. So for example, back in the day, I was getting up earlier than I do now. I would wake up at like 5:30 or 6 a.m. every morning. And I would say from 6 to 6:15, you're making your bed and getting dressed. And then from 6:15 to 7:15, you would read or do whatever project. And then from 7:15 to 7:45, you make and eat breakfast. And from 7:45 to 8, you wash your face and brush your teeth. My entire day was mapped out to the very minute. That definitely did not work. In fact, looking back, I can't think of a single day that I actually followed my schedule exactly. And as someone who is prone to stress, not following my very exact schedule obviously stressed me out. And now I definitely don't do that, and I would not recommend it for most people, because the reality is that each day will have at least one curveball to throw at you. And if you're not prepared to handle that, like if you have zero flexibility in your schedule, that's going to be really stressful. So for me, because I'm able to organize my day into like 3 big priorities that I want to get done, I'm not very specific about when those things need to get done unless it happens to be a situation where there's like a bit of a time crunch, because I'm able to be flexible with my day. If an unexpected meeting comes up, or if I sleep in a little bit later, or something comes up that kind of messes up what I had planned for the day, it doesn't really matter because flexibility is already built into my schedule. It's like, okay, you have 3 priorities that you're focusing on, and you can do that when, where, and how you want. Number 6 is a little bit odd, and that is don't look back. So I'm definitely the person that will close my garage door, and before I even make it out to the road, I'll be stressing about whether I actually closed my garage door. I'm constantly second guessing my actions. I might set the alarm for my apartment and literally 5 minutes later be like, did I set the alarm for my apartment? And I'll go back and check it like 5 times. Or I'll freak out about whether or not I turned off my coffee pot, and I'll check to see if my wallet is in my purse like every 10 minutes as if it has magically gotten out and walked away since the last time I checked. I don't like this about myself. It's this constant paranoia that I haven't done what I needed to do, even though like 99% of the time I have. So what I have done, I've kind of created this unspoken rule of don't look back. I watch to see my garage door close, and then I drive away, and if that voice in my head is saying, oh, you didn't close your garage door. Are you sure you closed your garage door? Maybe it like opened back up. I say, you know what? I closed the garage door, that's that. And I just kind of ignore that voice. And usually after a few minutes, it goes away. And I give myself permission to check these things once. So I'll check once to see if my door is alarmed. And then if that voice comes back, like, I don't think you set your alarm, I think like, well, nope, you know what? I checked it and it was alarmed and we're going to leave it. Same thing with my wallet and my purse. I'll check it once and then I'll leave it. And this might seem really simple, but it's actually really hard to do. This is more of just an exercise to kind of show myself that, you know what, you can trust in yourself that you've done what you need to do and you can move on with your day and you don't need to stress about it. Kind of along with tip number 6 is number 7, and that is think of the worst case scenario. Now, this might seem a bit counterintuitive, but it's actually really helpful when you think that the worst case scenario is usually not the end of the world. For example, I'm in the process of purchasing an investment property, and obviously this is a big decision and one that I have been a bit stressed out about, to say the least. But whenever I get that overwhelming sense of stress or anxiety, I just think, okay, what is the worst case scenario here, right? Like I buy a house, let's say it is heavily devalued. Let's say for some reason I'm not able to make the monthly payments. The bank takes the property back, my credit is damaged. Yeah, that would really suck. And also it's worth noting that's extremely unlikely because of all the research and due diligence that I've put into researching properties and figuring out what is best for me. But yeah, let's say it does happen. Okay. Worst case scenario, I still have a financial safety net, which I am making sure that I still have, but maybe I move back in with my parents for a while until I'm back on my feet. Like worst case scenario, the world's not gonna end. I'm not gonna end up homeless. I'm not going to end up on the streets. Like worst case scenario, I'll be able to bounce back. Now, for another example, for more of like a smaller kind of thing, I always stress out the night before I travel that I'm going to miss my alarm and then miss my flight. It's not uncommon for me not to sleep well at all the night before I travel just because I'm so stressed about missing my alarm. And so what I tell myself, well, I set like 15 alarms, but besides that, I think, okay, what's the worst case scenario here, right? Let's say I do oversleep, which is unlikely because I've set 15 alarms, but let's say it happens and I miss my flight. Yeah, that would suck, but it's also not the end of the world. It would likely cost me more money to rebook a flight, but again, it's not the end of the world. And to be honest, when I do this little exercise, there's not usually a worst case scenario that I think I can't bounce back from. Yeah, usually the worst case scenario really would suck, but it's something that I know I could manage. Number 8 is face the fear. Okay, so I used to have this unbelievably paralyzing phobia of looking at my bank account and seeing how much money I had in my checking and saving and investment accounts. It wasn't about the number or the amount, it was just this debilitating fear. Like finances in general had been built up so much in my head, and I constantly had this fear like I'm not doing enough. There was just a lot happening in my brain around finances. This was an irrational fear because I've always tried really hard to be wise with my money and investments, so I realized it was an irrational fear. And one of the things that I did to counter this was to routinely check my bank account, see where my money was going, what was coming in. I would check Mint a lot, which is an app that kind of tracks spending. Again, just the process of doing the thing that stressed me out kind of took the fear away from it, just because it was such an irrational fear to begin with. And the more I checked my finances and was aware of where my money was going, the less fearful I was around finances in general. And obviously I'm not saying, check every single day, like become obsessive, or, check 5 times a day. Don't become obsessive about these things, but it is worth noting that if there is something that is perhaps an irrational fear or something that is really stressing you out, it might be the best course of action to just consistently and routinely face that fear. Even if there was a problem that I needed to address with my finances, me being too afraid to look at them would not have helped anything, right? So even if there was a problem and in other areas of my life that I might be fearful of or stressed out about, like me avoiding looking into that situation or figuring things out is obviously not going to help anything. So those are my 8 tips, or not tips actually, these are 8 things that I'm working on and trying to implement in my own life to get over my own anxiety. I hope this video has been helpful in some way, and maybe you can take 1 or 2 of these tips and implement them in your own life if you're dealing with severe anxiety. And if you are dealing with severe anxiety, I'm sorry, it's not fun, and I wish you the best of luck. But definitely, if you enjoyed this video or found it useful or helpful in any way, definitely give it a thumbs up, because that really supports the channel. And subscribe and follow me on Instagram at Kristi's_day. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one.